Welcome back, WNST. On weekends here, watching the National Football League, watching college football, and certainly the Orioles now playing out the string, and there will be playoff baseball coming in a couple of weeks. Been a long time since I've caught up with Jim Williams. I am looking forward to this conversation. Been a couple of months. I've left Jimmy alone here this summer. He has been busy doing all things political and internet. He is a Washington-based media and streaming video columnist for the Huffington Post, but he lives in Baltimore. Don't tell anybody. Also does a podcast and a multiple Emmy Award-winning TV producer and executive, as well as our unofficial media examiner here at WNST.net. We welcome one of our defending champions back, Jim Williams, who is sick of the political stuff and wants to talk sports with me. Right, Jimmy?
Without question. Absolutely, my friend. Good to hear from you again.
All right, man. Well, look, I thought of you this week, and I called you, and I'm going to reach out to, Marty Conway and a whole bunch of my other, my sports business mafia, as I like to call them, for my guests around here to get me some information, and people like you that have been in the industry for several decades now. You work so hard in television and everyone around you, and I know we lost Don Ohlmeyer this week, and going back to Roone Arledge and why Art Modell should be in the Hall of Fame and what television has done for sports in America, what it's done for owners, what it's done for television networks and executives, what it's done for the players, and why guards are making $12 million a year in the NFL these days. But it's gotten so good that on week 1 in 2017, and I know you know the famous, Fonzie jumping the shark reference, boy, the NFL may have jumped the shark to have become such an incredible television product with the fantasy sports, with the gambling aspect, with the rah-rah-rah, with the 80-inch TVs in everybody's house now for $499, that people are not going to football games in droves, Jim, and getting people out to any game, whether it's a Towson game or a Morgan game or a Maryland game. Maryland played Towson last week, local, and nobody's there. Football's better on TV for a lot of people, and certainly a lot cheaper, and the NFL should be very, very concerned, right?
I agree. I think that the situation is that they've priced a lot of people totally out of the business. I mean, I can tell you a real quick story about a guy who I know who was, a surgeon in New York who was a lifelong Jets fan. And when the Jets moved over to the new stadium in the Meadowlands, basically his season ticket situation got so much that his PSL was $49,000. That's before he even bought the ticket.
Think of what you could do with $49,000 in regard to going to Europe for a week with $5,000 of it, going to Machu Picchu with another $6,000. It really is amazing how much, because I don't spend a lot on my Ravens tickets. You know what I mean? Like I go, my wife and I go. Our seats are under $100 a piece. They've always been affordable. I mean, when I got my PSL, it was a $500 PSL I had. Right. I paid $40 a ticket. I think my first year, my season books were $800 for two season books. I mean, it's not outrageous, but then I see the people sitting on the 50-yard line, and I realize their tickets say $325 a piece on them, and that was a $700 day for them, and that when their season tickets come, it's two vacations for me. You know what I mean? It's $5,000, $6,000, $8,000, $10,000, I think people are thinking, well, the game's on at home, and I can go down the street and get beer and shrimp cocktail and any pizza I want, and I can make lobster and fillet mignon if I want, and sit around here, and it'll cost me all of $48 to do that on a Sunday afternoon. That the NFL should really. I don't know what the answer is, dude. And I know Dick Cass and Steve Bisciotti and market research says we're going to build bigger scoreboards, dude. The scoreboard was not your problem. The scoreboard was not your problem. Really. No. The $10 beers are probably your problem. I mean, honestly, right?
Absolutely. And the thing is that, Ravens, M&T Bank Stadium is built after most of these newer ballparks have been built. And that's why we have the PSLs that are so absorbent with the ticket prices. And I think that, as you said, it's, let's just use, for the sake of argument, $20,000 as a PSL. I mean, what kind of man cave could you possibly build with $20,000? I mean, it's ridiculous. And your line that they've jumped the shark or they've killed the golden goose, I don't know. I think that without question, the NFL has become a great TV sport in large part because the HD, 4K, all that stuff is makes it easier to watch and makes it at a point where you don't necessarily have to go to the ballpark to enjoy it.
Well, and then there's just the general disdain for fans, right? I mean, we've seen that with the baseball team here, right? I mean, the Yankees were in town last week, Jim. The Orioles were legitimately in the pennant race at that point.
Right.
Very much so. And on a Tuesday night to draw 14,000 fans announced, and then the next night to rain it out, bang it, play it at 1 o'clock on a Thursday afternoon, and have 4,000 people look like a Little League game.
Friends and family.
And it's the Yankees and the Orioles in a pennant race in September. I tweeted out, well, why wouldn't they just open the gates for free or just turn it into a $5 ticket and try to get 10,000 people? But they don't care. Peter Angelos has never cared. His minions, his Brady Andersons have all told me, go F yourself. We don't want you at our ballpark. We don't want you to be a fan anymore. They've told me that to my face. And I guess for a lot of people, they've just taken them up on it and said, well, we'll go out there when you're going to give us a bobblehead or give us a T-shirt, and that's really leading. I mean, I've learned this year specifically, any night the Orioles give anything away, they're charging you $10 extra for the product. I mean, literally, the tickets that are, the $19 tickets, are $12 on any other night. The $7 for that T-shirt or that bobblehead, you're paying for it. They're just upcharging you. I mean, literally, and making you get in line at 4:30 in the afternoon to go get it,
It's funny, to your point about the opening the gates or make it easy anyway. The Nationals had a doubleheader, one of those situations where they had a rain out and then they had a split doubleheader. And they basically, this past month in August, offered the opportunity that if you wanted to stay to see the second game, all you had to do is pay $5 extra. It didn't matter what ticket you had, just pay $5 extra. You can keep that exact seat and stay for the second game. And they found out that of the 35,000 that they had at the afternoon game, they ended up with 22,000 at the night game.
Remember when the Blue Jays stunk for the 15th year and the SARS thing happened there with the flights out of Asia, and they did the dollar night, and 50,000 people showed up. I mean, people like a bargain. People like nice stuff. People like to think that the team cares about them. And I know the Ravens have spent the last 6 months saying that they care by building video boards, but from a Ravens perspective, the only thing that matters is that they won last weekend and the defense is good. Having a good team does matter, but it doesn't matter in Tampa for baseball at this point. It doesn't matter in Atlanta for baseball at this point. The new stadium's going to sell it. But, I remember when the Braves, the fans got tired of them winning. I mean, even said that in New England last week when they were getting their butts kicked up there. It feels like you can even get bored with being too good at some point. And I guess we were spoiled with that around here with the Ravens for a period of time where, there are little tents popped up on corners selling purple this and purple that. And then there comes the afterglow of that where everybody's got a closet full of purple. Everybody's seen what two parades look like around here. And then it's, well, do I want to go see the Cleveland Browns play this week, and do I want to spend $200, $400, $600 to do it? Jim, all over my Facebook, people are trying to sell their tickets and just trying to get their $80 or their $100 back out of it, and that's where we are because staying home this weekend is not such a bad option. You television people have made it so attractive, and the leagues have made it so attractive that it's harder. If I can eat the meal and not have to pay for it, why would I go to the restaurant?
Well, the other part of this, and you know this as well as I do, Nestor, and again, it's a TV situation. There's an incredible saturation of NFL content. I mean, you look at ESPN, you look at Fox, you look at any of the cable outlets. I mean, and you can't. It's like no other sports being played.
But that should lead people to the gates, though, shouldn't it? And instead, it leads them to the Red Zone channel, right? I mean, literally.
Yeah, exactly.
The weekends when we play Thursday night, like I've already identified, we play the Texans on a Monday, we play the Dolphins on a Thursday. Boy, that opens up a Sunday for me and Kitty and my wife to snuggle up on the couch on maybe a bad weather day or whatever. And I love my Sundays at home. I don't get many of them because I'm in an airport somewhere or, I'm over at the stadium early and late or sitting here doing radio. But, boy, on those Sundays when I don't have to do anything, I love the red zone, and every time I sit there and watch it, or I sit in a sports bar somewhere and watch 6 games at once, which is a little bit much for me, I do say to myself, I do wonder why people go to the games. Because this isn't so bad.
Yeah, it has changed dramatically since you and I first got into the business. It is absolutely totally changed.
The old line of business was if you put the game on TV, no one would come. That was the old baseball adage, which is why the home games were never on, right?
The shadow of the stadium is what it was
called.
And
maybe that's not so far-fetched 40 years later, Jimmy.
No, I don't think it is, and I don't think that, nothing. I guess the bottom line of baseball, not to change subjects, but the bottom line of baseball is it's not special anymore. When you used to televise 60 games, then you went out and, it became more important to be at the ballpark.
It feels like a birthright. If the game's not on television, you feel cheated.
It's not important anymore.
Yeah, if the game's not on TV, you feel cheated, right? You feel like...
right. What happened?
What are they doing to me? How can they not put the game on television? And I guess these are first world problems. Jim Williams joining us here. You can follow him out on Twitter. He is a Washington-based media and streaming video columnist for the Huffington Post now, but he has been our longtime friend, the defending champion here, and oft-times media critic, amongst other things. The death of Don Ohlmeyer, I know you wanted to address that, and while we're on the football topic, and what did Don Ohlmeyer bring the media universe that keeps people out of stadiums on weekends?
Well, Don Ohlmeyer was the man behind Monday Night Football, and I think a lot of people forget that that's the kind of work he did. He also was, from a sports standpoint, the guy who came up with the idea that if you went to sponsors, you could get them to put golf on Thursday and Friday, and basically it was Ohlmeyer who went to the PGA, and after the Broadcast Act said that you could, there was no standards and practices with regard to any of the sponsors not being allowed to use their name in the broadcast. So once that was clear, he started that. But besides starting and working ABC Sports and then later NBC Sports, where he, as a alumni of Notre Dame, decided the cheapest way to get into college football for NBC was to give Notre Dame $25 million for their football games. But he also was at one point put in charge of NBC's entertainment division, and it was Ohlmeyer who was the driving force behind the success of Seinfeld and Law and Order. He was the one who brought them to NBC. He's the one who shepherded them through. And so Don Ohlmeyer at 72 was quite a powerhouse in both the sports end of broadcast television as well as the programming aspect.
He was also, in overseeing at NBC, a huge part of Olympics coverage, right? And the way Olympics are covered, right?
Yeah, Ohlmeyer was massive when it came to the Olympic aspect. Because again, the tradition was ABC had set the bar, and Ohlmeyer
with entertainment with Monday Night Football and Wide World of Sports, right? In the early 70s, right?
Right, and he moved over and went to NBC and tried to craft their Olympic coverage for the most part using the Roone Arledge template, which has, to this very day continues to work. And that is, let's use Michael Phelps as an example. If you take Michael Phelps and you make him real and you make him a person and you show people the up close and personal behind the athlete, give them a backstory, then you have something to root for. And I think that's what Ohlmeyer learned from Arledge, and Ohlmeyer has passed it on to the folks at at ABC and of course then now at NBC. So it's what Don did was really to just take Roone's vision and push it all the way down the line, both on the entertainment side and on the sports side. And he actually mixed entertainment and sports quite a bit. And so for that, we owe Don Ohlmeyer quite quite a bit.
I think he was there when professional wrestling showed up, the Hulk Hogan stuff on the Friday night fights and all that too. That was all under his umbrella of sports and entertainment. He went into business with Vince McMahon before anybody would, right?
Yeah, the key with Ohlmeyer was that Ohlmeyer always wanted to make sure that there was an entertainment value in it, because he wanted to bring in the casual fan. He knew that you couldn't last if all you had were the diehard sports fans. You needed something in the mix that would attract at least a modicum of casual fans, and that was Ohlmeyer being the storyteller and making sure that each broadcast told a story, not just each broadcast catered to just the hardcore fan.
He is Jim Williams. He is JW Media DC out on Twitter. He's changed his Twitter handle. He's now at the Huffington Post and hanging out with us as I sneeze on the radio. There we go. Hey, man, it happens, man. I mean, that's tis the season. All right, so moving on from sneezing and nothing to sneeze at is, I know, you're a little bit DC-based these days, and you have followed along with some of my other friends like Maury Brown and Eric Fisher, amongst many others, and Marty Conway, in following all this Masson trail of money. And I've written to Peter Principles, and I followed it all, and I wrote a lot at length about it last year, just how much money Angelos has made off the Masson deal. And this is going to be the most precarious of off seasons for Angelos, with the Machado situation, with Buck and Duquette at the end of the year, with him getting older and certainly not any smarter. The team's pitching is awful, all of that. But on top of that, in October, all of their noses will be pressed up to the glass, watching their other Masson partner, the Washington Nationals, try to bring a parade to D.C. Look, I know they've been choking dogs for years. You know of my situation with the Nationals. Screw them. I'll be wearing my Dodger hat. But they can win the World Series, and I don't know what that means for Angelos winning, for the Nationals, winning for Masson. But I do know that as much as he doesn't want them to have a parade before he does, because that's the kind of bully and kind of man he is, I use man loosely there, I also know that if the Nationals become this bigger brand, he will make more money. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Oh, there's no question. And, the postseason for the Nationals is a huge benefit to Masson, because while they don't get to do the games, they get to do the pregame and the postgame shows, and anything having to do with off the field between games, it's going to be Masson. That's their show. And I think that there's no question that the Nationals are going to benefit Masson immensely. And I do think that as we see, you mentioned the Machado situation, not to get off topic, but I know for an absolute fact that the New York Yankees have made Manny Machado, their number one target in 2019. They want him in a pinstripe uniform, and they're going to, open the checkbook and make that happen if they can. I don't know Manny as well as you do. I assume that
I don't know Manny at all, by the way. No, I don't. No. I think in a perfect world, he'd like to get a bidding war going between Miami, Philadelphia, New York. I mean, the more the merrier. Yeah. That's the way this works.
Sure.
When there's 4 teams or 5 teams involved, that's how he gets $3 million more a year for 10 years, and that's how the contract goes from $370 million to $400 million. Right?
That's a Scott Boras trick. I do believe that
that Mr. Miami thing was just to bring one more team into the bidding, the natural team, right? I mean, and there's allegedly the Orioles would be in on the bidding, but, Angelos has never been that guy to get into a bidding competition. I mean, one of the reasons Chris Davis is here is because nobody else wanted him, and he felt like he got him at a discount and deferred, $30 million of the money.
Sure. Well, I do know that the Nationals are in conversation with Harper's people, with the Harper family and with our buddy Scott Boras, and so they're spending money and willing to spend money, and I think the Orioles fans are wondering, okay, let me ask you a question. We have the bigger deal here. We've got we've got the larger portion of the pie.
Angelo's not larger, larger by 85 to 15. Back that up. It's not 60-40. It's 85-15. I mean, and it's been that way for 12 years now. Angelos has made billions of dollars off of this Masson deal. So to say that he can't afford Manny Machado is that's dummy speak. You know, that's the stuff Duquette's going to say to the dumb fans, not to the educated fans, because anybody that's educated knows they have the money to sign Manny Machado. Now, will they? Should they? They'll make that, well, it's a bad deal. It's too much money. Look at Pujols. Yeah, I'll hear all that. He was hitting 205 in July this year. I mean, I'll hear all of that. But we're a small market team. I'm not going to hear that any more than when the old man dies. I'm going to hear that he saved the Orioles for Baltimore because he didn't.
No, I think that, if you look down the street and see that the Lerners are spending money, I mean, when you put, $210 million into Max Scherzer, when you look at what they've done over the course of time, they have spent money and they have elevated the franchise. Now, obviously, there are situations I understand, appreciate your animus toward them, which is legit. But it's
my animus is on many levels, just on how human beings have been treated, how the community's been treated, how people have been lied to. The same issues I have with the guy running the country right now. Don't lie to me. Don't pee down my back and tell me it's raining. And when it's been going on for 25 years. It's still not raining. I still feel your warm piss on my back. I do. I mean, that's the way it works. It just because you say it's water doesn't make it water, or wine for that matter. And I guess this many years into it with the Orioles, they have an empty stadium, and many would say, well, that's what they deserve, but they're making $1 billion. So the empty stadium against the Yankees means nothing.
No, what I was actually alluding to the point that the Lerner family was proving that they were willing to spend money regardless of what their television deal was. Versus, the Orioles.
I think deep down they think Mr. Angelos or his boys are going to be writing them a huge check at some point. I mean, at some point, there's going to be a couple of $100 million that has to go back to the Nationals. There just is going to be. I mean, I can't believe that's not going to happen in the end. That at some
it's just
point,
going to be a matter of time.
Yeah, at some point, the fairness of where all the money went will kick in, and look, Angelos is involved. Nothing's fair with Peter Angelos, so I've learned that. He is Jim Williams. He is JW Media DC out on Twitter. And last thing for you on the political side, because I know you do a lot of politics and media. Jamel Hill. This is where politics and media intersect. And Jim, just the jumping off point of, I remember when Kevin Byrne was up late at night, worried about the 10 minutes that media was open with what Terrell Suggs might say 10 years ago.
Sure.
Now, it's not just teams worried about what their football players are going to say, or teams worried about what their football players going to kneel for rights and all of that stuff. Now we have media personalities like myself that are charged with telling you, the audience, my friends, my sponsors, whomever is out there, what I really think. Right? Like that's why people tune in, to hear what I really think. And then I tell them what I really think. Around here, I don't have a boss. I have partners who sometimes are as disenchanted with me as my audience is, quite frankly, because I do say what I think. And yet we're in a whole media environment where, in one corner, if you're Stephen A. Smith, you're allowed to say kind of whatever you want. In another corner, you're not allowed to say what you want. And if you say something the boss disagrees with in regard to this fascist, white supremacist, racist scumbag that's running our country right now, see, I can say that because I believe it and I know it to be true. And, I would go to my deathbed on that. That's how I feel about it. But if I work for ESPN, I'm not allowed to say that or feel that or think that. And I guess that's probably the case if you work in any industry, where if your boss thinks that, Charlottesville was cool, Whether Steve Bannon's an honest guy.
It's an amazing situation, and if your name happens to be, Robert Lee, you can't do play-by-play.
Oh, it's incredible, right?
In Virginia. First of all, I don't think more than 10 people outside of his family, no offense to Robert Lee, knew who the heck he was, but now they do. Look, I find it very offensive that people are not allowed to speak their mind. The the situation that happened in Charlottesville, to me, was reprehensible. But, I fight for their freedom to speak. That's okay. But their freedom to march through the streets of Charlottesville the night before, chanting former Nazi, taglines, when most of these people, have no idea what the Nazis were. And they're basically saying, no, we should not get rid of this piece of history, which, oh, by the way, happened to be the general who was fighting against the United States of America. So the man was a traitor. You want him in your downtown statues? Fine. Put him somewhere where I don't have to.
But I don't know how you can expect to employ someone mouthy like Jemele Hill and not expect her to be mouthy when Colin Kaepernick's standing outside and has committed no crime and can't get a job. I mean, we're trying to quell free speech and legitimate speech in this country. And ESPN's playing a part of that. Clearly, Fox has played the biggest role in our culture right now, quite frankly. And it really is. It's tough in the same way that Goodell is trying to keep things calm in the NFL and watching what players are saying and trying to play judge and jury. Boy, playing the judge is a really difficult role, isn't it, Jimmy?
He shouldn't have done it in the first place. I mean, that was the problem. He made himself chief, judge and executioner, and all of a sudden, the complex aspects of what was going on, whether it be spousal abuse, whether it be, the situation with Kaepernick, it's when you get into social issues, you need a buffer between you and the commissioner, and I think that's been the biggest thing that if I have one key issue that I disagree with Roger about, it's the fact that he did not put himself, a buffer in between them. Just like, when Bud Selig was involved, the first thing he did was we went out and got Joe Torre and put Joe Torre, and then prior to Joe Torre, it was Frank Robinson. He put people who had
credibility
an idea
too.
of what it was like to play to be involved in the disciplinary aspect of it.
Well, and I guess that makes it even more difficult on the media side, which is your background, when it is a Jemele Hill, when it is a Linda Cohn, when it is a Stephen A., whenever it is, whether it's black, white, left, right, east, west, whatever, you are saying to these people, we're putting these people in front of you because they have integrity and they have, thoughts and they are educated and they do bring an interesting perspective and they want to give you food for thought based on their perspective, except shut up and say what we tell you to say. And that is a very, 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 I've been doing this my whole life, Jim. That's a very, very dangerous slope for anyone in the media to be told by Big Daddy up on the hill what you can and can't say. It's offensive to me to think that anyone would want to work in that kind of an environment.
Well, it's funny because you bring up a point which I think is very, very important. I personally, my own background, I worked with the Washington Examiner, which was far more conservative than I will ever be. I've worked with a number of companies and broadcast groups that are far more conservative than I will ever be, but I've never been told by any of them.
If you're not conservative, you can't work here. If you're not liberal, you can't work here. Right.
There's no litmus test to it, and I think that's important to note. There is, however, seemingly, for whatever reason, a litmus test at ESPN and at Fox that scares the living bejesus out of me because I think that people, should be allowed to speak their mind and do what you do. And, if you don't like it, then don't listen.
Turn me off. I mean, believe me, people have turned me off and turned me on. But I hope that if you're listening to me right now, that you at least believe there's integrity behind what I say, that I believe what I say.
Right.
And I say what I mean, and I mean what I say. And that's why you're here 26 years later listening to me. That if I was on a marionette string and had puppets controlling me, I wouldn't be worth listening to. I wouldn't listen to me, if I wouldn't believe that. So the Jemele Hill thing has really got me stirred up. I don't really know her. I've met her once or twice, and I do agree with her stance. But more than that, I agree with the platform for her to say whatever she wants to say in the same way that all the goofy stuff that Tony Saragusa and Kurt Schilling put on my Facebook threads, I don't agree with it, but I wouldn't say to them, I wouldn't employ you here because you said it, right?
Right. Well, I mean, point in fact is Tucker Carlson's a good friend of mine. There's no way that Tucker and I ever will see eye to eye on politics, but when you don't talk politics and you talk sports or you talk other things, you can be friendly. You know, he respects my opinion. I respect his.
Well, and he's probably not going to change yours, and you're probably not going to change his, right?
No, but at the end of the day, he's saying what he believes. I'm saying what I believe. You're saying what you're believing. Nobody's stopping us from saying it.
He is Jim Williams. He's been doing it and saying it in the media for going on 4 decades now. He is JW Media DC, now in Washington as a Huffington Post writer and podcast host as well, and he's won a whole bunch of Emmy Awards. They're all hanging on the wall over this place. You can follow him, JW Media DC, out on Twitter. Jimmy, always good to catch up with you, man. I'm sorry I got a little spirited here, but free speech is really, really, really important to me and really, really behind anything I've ever done and any dollar I've ever made in this industry has been based on that, and I defend it. I defend all that. I defend Colin Kaepernick, and that's the way I'm going to choose to live my life. But, hey, man, keep the faith out there. We got the baseball playoffs coming up, some football, and it's always great to visit with you. I'm glad you're doing well.
And you as well, my friend.
JW Media DC, he is Jim Williams, multi-time Emmy Award winner, and our oft-times, sometimes media corrector, and the TV repairman around here, for lack of better expression. A little love for Phil Jackman there as well. You can find me out in the buyatoyota.com audio vault 24 hours a day from anywhere in the world on your mobile device by downloading the TuneIn Radio app. We do come in crystal clear from anywhere in the world. And, of course, we're going to be over in London next week, so that is anywhere in the world. You can listen over there, or you can join us in East London in the Docklands area at the Fox at XL pub. We're going to have some fish and chips and some pints. We're going to be taking the Emirates Air cable car across the River Thames to the O2 Arena. We'd love to see you over in London if you are making it. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.